Mary Driscoll, we're delighted and thrilled that you've agreed to have us interview you about your time as Dean within the School of Education. Let me first start with the first question. When did you serve as Dean, and how long did you serve?
I began my service August 1st, 2012, and I finished in January 31st of 2020.
And what were the unique situations that you faced as Dean?
I was thinking about this because you had given me the questions ahead of time, and I think one of the things that now feels very historical was the fact that I came into the school at a time when the relationships between schools of education and higher education and the Department of Education in New York City were not close. It was sort of the end of the Bloomberg administration, and they had very definite ideas about what educational preparation, teacher preparation, and principal preparation in particular should look like. And they were much more comfortable with business models and really had a group of folks who were in many ways had some antipathy towards higher education. And of course, for many, many years, that had been a very close public service relationship between the City College School of Education and the Department of Ed. And I'm pleased to say that during my tenure, not because of what I did, but because of changes in administration and also the efforts of a number of people of good faith around the school, we built back a really strong, very dynamic relationship. And I think that served our students well and also served the children of the city of New York, because we were preparing teachers and leaders who look like them. And I think that's really important.
How did you go about building a closer relationship then with the Department of Education?
Well, it's interesting. Some of you may remember who are still there that at the time I arrived, we had about 10 days, maybe 2 weeks, to apply to be a provider through the New York City Teaching Fellows. And it was a very prescriptive proposal. It involved, and so I came in thinking I would be cheering people on. And the first day people looked at me and said, so what are we going to do? And it was a wonderful way to come into a job, because when you have a common task and you're under some pressure and it means something to do it well, then people work together in really interesting and productive ways. So I got to know the faculty much faster and the staff. We got 11 proposals out, and then we went through a review process. And then in the spring, we were told that for the first time, we were not going to get any fellows. We had been really instrumental in founding the program. Shortly after that, we got an opportunity to do what became our bilingual fellows, which was a bilingual certificate. And it involved us really being responsive to the needs of working teachers, starting the classes at a different time, figuring out a kind of different registration system, working through payment. And I had learned from a colleague of mine, the late Terry Astuto at NYU, the hardest thing to do is not to say no, it's to say yes. And we said, yes, we're going to do this. This is important. And that began, the wonderful team of people at City College really figuring out, when we had an opportunity, how would we do this? How would we make it happen? Where were we stretching ourselves too thin, but also, where were we building goodwill? And largely because that program was successful and because we had shown ourselves to be responsive partners who were willing to sort of work out solutions as opposed to just saying, no, it has to be done this way. We got the fellows back. And then people were so happy with that we really grew it again to a substantial number. And this was while we were doing other things besides fellows programs. I don't mean that was the only thing, but that was important because it was emblematic of what continues to be, I believe, a very rich relationship with the New York City Department of Education across all our programs, not in any ways limited to the fellows, which have changed again, but where we really talk about field preparation and the kinds of individuals they need and the kinds of professional development that working teachers need. And I think City College became a place again that was it was a go-to place if you wanted to sort of figure out something, and that happened at the state level as well. And I don't take any credit for that, except that I was in a position of helping people figure out with them figure out how to make some of this happen, and to run interference or secure the resources or make sure that we had the backing across the university.
So when you came into City College, can you remember what your hopes were for the School of Education?
You hope that you really are able to maintain a place that not only is a good and welcoming place for students and prepares them well for difficult and challenging careers, that you're able to continue to support them through their life cycle, which is something that we've always wanted to do, and it's hard to do. And that you create, I think more importantly from a dean's perspective, that you create a community of faculty, scholars, and staff who feel like it's a good place to work and they're doing something important. And that's really the engine. That's the engine that makes it run, not the dean.
What were your surprises and your observations about your role as dean?
I had never been in an institution that was unionized. I had never been in an institution that was subject to FOIL. And both of those things, turned out to be nowhere near as big a deal as you think they are if you're in a non-unionized private institution. I mean, they're just the ways of doing business. I think I was surprised at how non-limiting the contracts were. There were a set of rules and expectations, for the most part, pretty fair. And so I think that really, I also think that in a very different way, it was, for me, by far the most profound experience of working with a truly diverse staff and a truly, truly diverse student population. And that expanded me and educated me and enriched my life in ways that I don't think I could have imagined. I can remember the wonderful graduation that Michelle Obama spoke, and we had these two marvelous student speakers, the young woman from Yemen who talked about, women in her country not having an opportunity for education and what City College had done. But then there was this great kid from Long Island that said, I grew up with people that looked like me and ate like me and did the same things I did, and their mothers were the same as my mother. And then I came to City College, and I think, Mrs. Obama, of course, knocked it out of the park that day and absolutely captured that element of City College. I think the other piece of it that I was reflecting on, it's been true in my family, it's true in a lot of families, that education, but particularly preparation for the teaching profession, has been a real engine of social mobility. And that was very real and very tangible for our students. And I could see how important that was to the faculty and the staff as they worked alongside those students to get them ready for those jobs.
In thinking about your experience as dean, and aside from that memorable graduation with Michelle Obama and those two magnificent students, was there another moment or situation that seemed memorable to you that you'll sort of think about from years to come as you were dean?
Well, there were a million little moments. I mean, a million moments with students and faculty. I do remember the sense of accomplishment that we had after our NCATE accreditation, and not because we passed. I mean, that was great, but because it was the accretion of, you know, couple of years of getting ready for that, and contributions and conversations and um, you know, and so I think that was a lovely moment. I also have to say, you know, when I was there, we had some tough budget conversations, and I always felt that the School of Education meeting, which was both a faculty and staff meeting, um, I always left feeling that we had operated, not always agreeing with one another, but for the most part as a respectful community, even when the news was bad. And I remember saying to my colleague deans, you know, how often do you meet with your faculty? And they said, and faculty and staff, and they said, oh, maybe once a semester, you know. And I said, you're missing out. We do it every month, every month, and it becomes, and even when the times were tough, if you recall, we've never had lavish food, but I said, we're not going to take away the fellowship of having food, because it was a time that, you know, people kind of set aside and really did take seriously. And I'm not saying every moment was scintillating, but I think that was a tradition that was there long before I came, and I think it was so important for us to maintain and sustain. And it made me so much better as a dean, because I wasn't, you know, shooting in and sending memos. I was actually having conversations with people.
Along with the NCATE accomplishment, was there anything else that you were most proud of while serving as dean?
I was always trumpeting, again, not to harp on it, but trumpeting our success in preparing educators of color. And even within CUNY, and I shall not name the colleague institutions, but we were more diverse and successful. And I think that was, and if you remember, there was also a period there where the state standards had gotten very prescriptive, and there were a lot of tests that were put in very quickly that had consequences. And I was always, I was proud to advocate for our students. I was proud to advocate with the regents and with whoever else, you know, about where those reforms were not well thought out in terms of serving part-time students or serving students for whom English was not their first language, who would end up being very good teachers. And so I think that was something that was it was very genuine and very, it was both genuine and intentional at City College, and important.
And the final question, Mary, is from your perspective, how has the School of Education made an impact on public education, on New York City and beyond?
You know, I think you're going to be finding some of our talented alumni and alumnae who have had careers. The current interim commissioner in New York State is an alum of the City College School, and she was previously the head of the Board of Regents. So, I mean, you know, it's not too bad. As was a number of regents, actually. Charlotte Frank was another. And so, and I, you know, so there have been prominent alumni, but I think the reach of City College actually into the schools in New York City is just, you know, it's profound. And, you know, it is a university for the people with intellectually rigorous standards. And it's exactly, you know, the mission of that institution is exactly what it is doing, which is serving the children of the city of New York in every way possible. And so it's not just through the preparation of professionals, but as you know, we have other programs in the arts and in early childhood and in other, you know, that basically go on. And well, a teacher would, as they say, touches the future, but those who teach teachers, and once I did the math and I figured the number of alumni that we'd had, even in 10 years, and that if every one of them taught 30 kids in a year, and I think I even brought it down to 25, the influence of our graduates over a 10-year period was in the hundreds of thousands. I mean, it was, it wasn't tough math to do. If you have 100 graduates, and we had far more than that, and they each teach 25 kids, that's 2,500 kids a year. And in fact, we had something more like 400, and most of them weren't teaching 25 years, and we had this long history. That is not incidental. I mean, in the life of a city. And so I think it's an important piece.
Mary, yeah, I don't know if there's a question that I should have asked that I didn't. If you have anything else you would like to add to this interview, you're more than
well.
welcome.
I just hope whatever party you have to celebrate, I'm invited to. And I'm able to come, not virtually, but I'll come virtually if that's the only way I can. And I think it's, I'm delighted that this became something that the staff and faculty were so excited to make a project. I know Gretchen Johnson has been working on it too, and that there's I think it's important to claim your history, even as you are pointed towards the future. And that has always been the story at City College. I mean, there's been celebration of the past, and rightly so. But I have to say, it wasn't a place that I found to be steeped or mired in, oh, the good old days. It was about, what do we need to do now? And I think in that 100 years, we have always served, the neediest kids in the city. And that's a proud thing.
Mary, thank you again. My best to you and your new chapter.
Okay, stay healthy, both of you. Thank you.
Thank you.